So why don't we just jump right in? Online reputation is a valuable business asset. I think that goes without saying. The vast majority of businesses that I represent have an online presence. And if you are selling either B2C, right, to consumers, or even B2B, I think your online presence is something that you really have to be paying attention to. And here's why, right? 92% of consumers are hesitant to complete a purchase when your online presence is not up to what they're looking for. And really, what they're looking for is consumer reviews, Google reviews. They're going to be looking for an online presence, and they want to see what other consumers think about the services that you provide. 52% of consumers will only consider a business that is at least a 4 to 5 star reviewed type of a business, depending on where they're finding those stars. Could be Google, could be Yelp, could be wherever. That's what they're going to be looking for out there. So you have to be paying attention to that in particular. 88% of consumers say that they would use a business that responds to all of its reviews. So it's not just enough to have reviews, to have a good review rating, but also to be responsive to the customers as they are leaving comments about their experience with your business. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. And here's a big one, right? A 1 star increase in your business's Yelp rating on average leads to almost 10% of an increase in your revenue. So all of this means real money to small business owners. Here's another one I like, an interesting graphic that I like, and a concept called the social proof filter, right? Consumers use online reviews as a proxy for personal recommendations. It used to be before the businesses could have online presence that are reviewed. We used to rely upon personal recommendations, and we still do, right? If you're familiar with the platform called Nextdoor, there are people there who are posting specifically asking for personal recommendations to other businesses. So reviews are kind of a more modern way of seeking personal recommendations. And when a business has a high volume of positive feedback from its customers, it triggers something that's called social proof, right? It's a psychological phenomenon where people assume that the actions of others reflect correct behavior. So it gives them a strong belief, builds in a sense of trust, right? As soon as they see that you have a high rating, and they see there are lots of reviews on there, hopefully most of them positive, then that conveys to them that they should be able to trust the business, trust all of the reviews, what they're saying, and it's going to make it much more likely that they are going to do some business with you or make a purchase of some kind. And it reduces the perceived risk of a purchase, right? So your brand recognition is a big thing, but positive reviews act sort of as a guarantee of quality, so to speak. It makes someone feel better immediately about working with your business, even though they don't know so much about their business. It might be that all that they do is look at the products or services that you're offering, and they look at the reviews. And before they dig into the details of exactly what you say about what you provide or the specific services that you provide, maybe they make the decision to do a purchase just because of your online profile or your presence. So it's really, really important. Your online profile is also very important for visibility and discovery, right? Just having a positive reputation, in addition to convincing people to do business with you, even before they get there, it helps people find you, right? Search engine algorithms are going to put your business, in some type of a pecking order in the search results. If somebody is out there searching for a plumber and Ambler PA, where's your business going to appear if somebody does a search query just for that? Well, all of the search engines like Google and Yahoo and Bing and Microsoft Explorer or whatever they call it these days, they have to have some type of a way of putting all of these businesses in a pecking order, and they're going to prioritize businesses that have an online presence. They've claimed their profiles and also have high ratings and frequent reviews from customers. So having this online presence and a positive online presence helps people find your business, not just convince them to do business with you. It actually helps them find your business. Let's talk a little bit about comparison and deselection, the decision-making process, right? A lot of consumers, when they're out there shopping online, they might have 3 or 4 tabs open all at once, trying to look for whatever it is that they're looking for online. And a positive reputation can serve as a tiebreaker in all of those various businesses, restaurants, contractors, um, beauty salons, whatever it is that your business is. Having a great online presence and reputation may end up being the tiebreaker that gets them to say yes to you rather than doing business with somebody else. So they want the social proof, right? The social proof as exhibited by the reviews from people in the community saying this is a great place to do business. So maybe you choose them. So if you have an online presence, and you probably have been at some point or another the subject of a reputation attack. What exactly is a reputation attack? And it's an attempt to harm your credibility and trustworthiness, and they ultimately make it harder for you to attract and retain customers. And these can be very deflating, even devastating for small businesses. Common types of attacks, right? Negative reviews, especially reviews that are meant to harm your online reputation. We've all dealt with them. You can't please everybody. And even if you are making a good effort, sometimes you make mistakes or you disappoint customers and they will leave negative online reviews. And those, after a while, can accumulate for you. One star review is going to drag down all of your other positive reviews. I think that I've heard that it takes somewhere between 20 to 40 5-star reviews to counteract one star review. So they can be particularly difficult to overcome over time. You might have bad actors out there who are flooding the internet with false reports about your business. You've got negative social media posts and comments, bad actors, maybe even disgruntled current or former employees, angry customers trying to drag your business through the mud might be out there trying to ruin your reputation and harm your business for whatever motive they have. And you might even have impersonation scams out there, criminals posing as you to damage your credibility with other customers. If somebody is engaging in spoofing, right, where they pretend to send an email from you to customers that they think you're working with, that is a type of impersonation scam that is an attempt to hurt your business or could hurt your business, because people might shy away from your business if they think that that's really from you and they get freaked out about it. So, whenever I've talked to business owners in the past about attacks on their business, if they are the subject of one of these reputation attacks, they get pretty upset about it, and justifiably so. I totally get it. I'm a small business owner myself. It is an unhappy day whenever I see a low Google review come across my screen. I'm very unhappy about that. Your first instinct is to do something about it. And certainly whenever I have my small business clients call me, they're calling me to say, I want you to do something about it. Not necessarily, should we do something about it, but rather, I want you to do something about it. And the first thing that I think of, and I will have a conversation with my clients about, is the actionability filter, right? Not all bad reviews or online posts that are unhappy for your business are illegal or or actionable, right? So to be actionable in Pennsylvania and many jurisdictions, A review's got to really cross the line from protected expression to a verifiable falsehood. That really is the basic standard that we have to start using to look at these posts to see whether there's something that should be done about them. So I've got a little grid here, generally not actionable, or things like pure opinion, right? The food was bland and the service was slow. You may disagree with that, but that's an expression of an opinion, right? And that's not going to be actionable. Maybe something is over the top. This was the worst repair shop in the history of the universe. Not something that you want somebody to say about your business. But again, that is an expression of opinion, right? There's no objective standard for whether, whether you're the worst or the best repair shop in the world. Or something is substantially true, right? They failed to complete the project on time. If that's true, if there was a project completion date and they failed and you failed to meet it, then that's substantially true. There may have been extenuating circumstances why you weren't unable to finish the project on time. Perhaps the property owner delayed in getting some selections back to you so that you could complete the work. But if it was after the finish date on the contract, it was after the finish date on the contract. And that's substantially true. You might have a difficult time taking action on that. Now, things that are potentially actionable are like false statements, undeniably false statements. I saw rats in the kitchen when in fact none were there. Or I saw rats in the kitchen and you weren't at the restaurant. So you could not have possibly seen them because you weren't there. It's just an outright lie. Accusations of criminality, right? The owner is overcharging credit cards and stealing identity, some kind of a statement like that. I've had a client who had an animal training and boarding business, and they were subject to online posts. Somebody saying that they harmed the animals, that they were cruel to animals. Those are not only allegations that were false, just objectively false. There were also allegations of criminality because cruelty to animals in many jurisdictions is a crime. That may very well be something that is actionable and not protected under the law. How about a fabricated experience, a review from someone who was never actually your customers? I got to say, of all of the frustrations that I've seen out there, that is one of the biggest ones where somebody never was your customer, but they're posting something negative about your business online. All right, so let's say we went through the filter, and okay, this may be potentially actionable. Here are some things that you need to understand about whether you can do something and what you can do, whether you should do something, and if so, what you should do about it. There are some federal and state laws that come to bear when figuring out where you're going to go and what you're going to do with this. And one of them is the Consumer Review Fairness Act. This is a federal statute that came into law several years ago, and it was specifically intended to protect people's ability to share honest opinions about a business's product or services in any forum, including reviews, social media, online, somewhere. And this really passed in response to reports that some businesses were trying to prevent people from giving honest reviews of products and services. And some companies even included provisions in their contracts with their customers that prohibited their customers from leaving online reviews or negative online reviews, or allowed the business to sue them or penalize them for posting negative reviews. That's why this order came into effect. So most importantly, this statute voids any type of provision in a form contract with a customer that prohibits or restricts negative reviews, that would impose penalties or fees for negative feedback, that requires customers to give up their intellectual property rights to reviews, where you're assigning ownership of those negative reviews to the company so that the company can cause them to be taken down. Now, that's the biggest takeaway, right? That this statute prohibits businesses from doing. Now, it doesn't apply to all contracts, right? But it would apply to generic terms of service that you have in your contracts or standard work order provisions that you have in your contracts. Those are the ones that you have to be concerned about. But it does not apply to employment contracts, let's say, for instance. It doesn't apply to contracts that you have with vendors or independent contractors out there. So in some respects, you can continue to include these types of provisions in contracts that you have with people who could in fact be leaving you negative reviews, employees being a big one big a source of them. So if you have these provisions in your contracts, the law says that they're void, right? Doesn't, if they're there, they're just void as a matter of law. They cannot be enforced. And if you try to enforce them, they are considered to be an unfair or deceptive act by the Federal Trade Commission. And if the FTC comes down on you, fines can exceed $50,000 per violation. So, you know, is the FTC out there scouring the internet and taking action in all instances whenever they receive a complaint of something that somebody believes violates the Consumer Review Fairness Act? I'd say probably not, especially under this administration, which is very business friendly. But nonetheless, it's a law that's out there, and the pendulum often swings. Enforceability, it waxes and wanes. And so from a business perspective, I think what you should be doing is taking a look at your contracts, and you should probably eliminate these types of provisions from your contracts, not your employment contracts, not with your vendors and independent contractors that are providing services to your customers, but for your customer contracts. That's really where you need to be taking these out of there. Now, this act does not protect all types of statements and comments that are online about your business. You can still remove or sue over reviews that are clearly false and misleading. A reviewer claims that they found a rat in the restaurant, but they were never a customer, or did it describe an event that never happened. Those types of reviews are not protected by this statute. Things that are libelous or defamatory, again, they're not statements of opinion. This was the worst food I've ever had, or this is the worst Italian in the city, or this is the worst nail job that I've ever been given. Those aren't necessarily actionable. But if it's a statement of fact, or a statement that is intended to be a statement of fact, but in fact is untrue, those could be libelous, defamatory, and those are not protected by this statute. If the statement contains confidential information or attempts to leak trade secrets, personnel file information, customers' private medical or financial data, those types of statements in posts are not actionable. Or if it's harassing, obscene, vulgar, sexually explicit, targets individuals based upon race, gender, ethnicity, these are not things that are protected by the federal law, and you can take action against them. So you can include these types, you can include provisions in your contracts, but you need to be very careful about what exactly that you're putting in there, that you're going to try to tell your customers that they can or they can't do. All right, so let's switch gears and talk about what you can do. Here's some best practices on protecting your business from reputation attacks. And I think the most obvious thing is, number one, you got to keep a close eye on your online presence, right? You got to be looking at it. Keep an eye on it. So regularly check key platforms like Google, Yelp, Trustpilot, other industry-specific review sites. Set up a Google alert. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to Google or go to your AI tool and ask, what is a Google alert and how do I set one up? Basically, you're going to put some keywords in there that if somebody posts something that uses one of those keywords, like your business name, you're going to get an alert telling you that somebody has posted something using that key term, like your business name, and it's going to give you a link to wherever that post exists online so that you can take a look at it. So if somebody posts something negative about you, it's going to tell you, and you can catch it as soon as it's out there and take whatever action is appropriate to limit or eliminate it, or mitigate it to the best of your ability. So it's not floating around there for lots and lots of people to see before you have done something about it. You can also purchase monitoring tools, Bitdefender, other identity protection, business reputation types of services that are out there that you can pay for, that will be looking for these types of things, and they may offer some type of remediation service that's available to mitigate these types of things. So, keep an eye on what's going on with your online business. What people say about your online business matters. I think we've established that. So staying informed is really your first step in protecting your online business. Secondly, we're all part of this as well, is to claim your business listings that are out there, right? So major search engines and review sites may have listings that you can claim for yourself, like Google, Yelp, Bing Places. Here's a bunch of them that are out there. You may be online already, and you want to be able to claim these so that you can control these, right? You want to ensure that your business details that are already out there generically are actually correct, right? Sometimes these unclaimed profiles display outdated or incorrect information about your business, like your address, a wrong phone number, wrong URL for your website, a wrong street address for your business. The hours that you're open are incorrect. These sometimes are just out there that are plugged in generically based upon old information that was picked up from, who knows where. Maybe even the name of your business is wrong. So you're going to want to claim your listings online to make sure that all of that information is true, accurate, and correct. All right, number 2, be proactive. Respond to all of your reviews, positive and negative, and be professional and courteous in your responses. You may not want to be, but that's really the best way for you to be. Report fake or suspicious reviews to the platform where those reviews appear. So if you get something that looks funky on your Google profile, that's probably the most prevalent one that's out there, then there is a process that Google makes available to you to report those, to see if they will take them down. If you're facing a coordinated attack, document everything, and you may want to seek legal assistance or some type of cyber security assistance if there is a attack from sort of a lot of different fronts. You may be dealing with something that's bigger than just one disgruntled client or employee who is seeking to sully your online reputation. Engage with your customers on socials by answering questions and addressing concerns in a timely manner. So, whenever you don't reply to reviews or respond to customer concerns or that appear in social posts like Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever it is out there, it really kind of says implicitly that you don't care what your customers have to say whenever you don't reply to them. When you do reply to them, it really does say a lot about you, that you care about your customers and that you want to be responsive to them and address whatever their concerns are. That's what a responsible business does. And you want to convey that you care about your customers and that you are responsive to whatever their concerns are, and you want to do a good job for them. So some do's and don'ts about online responses, right? Don't engage in an argument with online reviewers or online commenters. Don't use aggressive language that makes you look like a bully or that your butt hurts, so to speak, as they say. You're going to be offended. You have to try to rise above the language that the person that's making bad comments about you. You got to rise above the language that you're using. You are trying to create an impression or counteract an impression that this bad person, this bad actor, this disgruntled person is trying to create about you. So, you can't get into the weeds with them, get into the gutter with them. That only reflects poorly on you. You probably want to take a screenshot immediately of whatever these posts are and that they look like. Because if you do decide to take action against this person later on down the line, that evidence, those posts have a tendency to disappear once the user gets a cease and desist letter, or I like to call them a nastygram from me or your lawyer, whoever it is that you decide to use. So you want to take a screenshot of all of that stuff so that you have preserved the evidence in the event that you have to use it in the future. Um, you know, I love this phrase, the Streisand effect, right? A heavy-handed response can accidentally go viral and cause more damage than the original post. So, if you're going to respond, you have to respond in a measured kind of a way, because if you don't, it can cause it to blow up, and it ends up getting the attention of a lot more people than the original post would have had you just left it out there. So you got to be very careful about how you respond, what your response is, what the language is, what you're saying to this person, because you don't want it to blow up. That's the Streisand effect. If you're familiar with that story from many, many years ago, where there was a picture posted of Barbara Streisand's beautiful home on the Malibu cliffs, and the purpose of the picture was to document erosion, coastline erosion, and her attorney got misguided and sent a very nastygram to whoever was posting the photo. And at the time that the attorney sent the cease and desist letter, there were only like 8 people who had accessed the photo, including a few from her own lawyer. Well, it ended up blowing up, and hundreds of thousands of people ended up seeing this whole thing. And it was really not very complimentary to Barbara Streisand that they were sicking their mean lawyers on these people that otherwise had posted something, innocently. And in retrospect, I think she was quoted as saying, that's not really what I wanted to have happen. I just wanted my name to be disassociated with the photo so that people didn't necessarily know that that was my house. That's really all that she wanted. That would have been a different way of responding to that particular situation. Just take my name off of it. You can leave the picture there. Just take my name off of it. But the way it went was really kind of a bad way ultimately for her, made her look bad. And if there are bad posts out there about you, navigate the terms of service for whatever the platform is where the post appears, and see if you can request removals. So it could be that if somebody posts something that is sexually explicit or vulgar, or they are outright racist comments, the terms of service for Google, Yelp, Bing, or any of these other, they may prohibit that type of language in postings, and they may take it down just for that reason, right? It could be that whatever's in the post violates your copyright laws, and the platform may remove the post, the review, the post, whatever it is, because of copyright violation reasons, rather than the substance of whatever it is this person is saying about your business. So there are lots of different ways that you might be able to be successful in getting these negative things taken down, not just complaining about the substance of what it is that they're talking about. So I want to take a minute to talk a little bit about employees, because I think employees really are um, the folks that there's a high risk that an employee that's angry with you, or especially a disgruntled former employee because they've been let go, they can really be a source of some of the bad reviews or other bad online comments, about your business. And I've certainly dealt with this, as well. One case in particular comes to mind about an event center that I represented, and a former employee who got canned from there for very good reasons started posting things about events and the quality of the food and things of that nature. Very negative comments about the event center. Some of them were pretty bad, and we had to get into the weeds to deal with that. So, employees can really be a source of a lot of negativity when it comes to your business. So I do suggest that, in order to counteract that, in addition to monitoring your online presence and being proactive about things that are posted there, you probably want to include specific provisions in your employment policies that address online disparagement of your company. So, the first thing that you want to tell your employees is that's just not something that is going to be consistent with continued employment. You have a policy against that, right? And I'd point out, you don't have to point it out to your employees, but I'll say to you that having those policies in place is consistent with the common law duty of loyalty that your employees owe to the company while they are employed there. So you want to make sure that they know that while they're employed there, online forums aren't the place to take whatever their gripes and grumbles are, that you are going to provide a different path, a different process, a different forum where whatever those issues are can be raised and dealt with, not in an online. And you can also include non-disparagement clauses in employment severance agreements if you're letting somebody go. And there's a lot of benefit of having severance agreements as well. What I will say is that these non-disparagement provisions in employment agreements are coming under scrutiny by federal and state regulators. And some states actually have laws that prohibit or exempt certain speech from these clauses, including labor unions. The NLRB has an anti-non-disparagement rule in place for these severance agreements. And it may also not, you may not be able to prohibit your employees from making statements about their own wages, sexual harassment in the workplace, discrimination in the workplace, those types of things. Your non-disparagement provisions may not survive legal scrutiny and protect you for that type of speech, but it can protect you from a lot of negative things that your former employees can say about you. So it's good to be thinking a little bit about having these provisions in place and making a practice to have these types of provisions and agreements to protect your business. So let's say that we've decided that this is actionable, and we want to do something about it. Where do we go from there? Perhaps you have asked me or your lawyer to send whoever this person is to send a cease and desist letter, and that hasn't gotten you the action that you really want. And maybe we have to think a little bit about going to the courthouse to take the next steps. So some things to understand and think about. First and foremost, and I've run into this, sometimes the identity of the disparager, the person that making online statements about you, is difficult to determine. You don't know exactly who it is. That can be very difficult to figure out. There's certainly a legal process that we can go through to attempt to cause whoever the online platform is to disclose the identity of the person that's behind whatever that profile is. But that's going to be a legal fight in many instances. Google doesn't have to give up the name, address, phone number of people who have online accounts. Same thing with Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. They're not just going to send you that information because your lawyer sends a letter to say, tell me who this is. So that can be a big problem right off the bat in doing something about whoever these people are. You don't even know necessarily who they are. So that it can be sometimes be very difficult to stop. But a cease and desist letter is often effective, right? Most people get nervous whenever they receive a letter from a lawyer that is telling them that they need to do something in particular, or there are going to be consequences, right? And that cease and desist letter should set a firm deadline for a retraction, if that's what it is that you're looking for, or a deadline and specific instructions for the type of action that you're looking for, like removing a post, removing a review, something like that. So the letter should really be very specific to tell them what you want done and by when you want those things done. But if a lawsuit is something that you feel is appropriate to take action, you really have to keep in mind that there are statutes in many states that are that provide remedies to stop what are referred to as strategic lawsuits against public participation. They're often called SLAPP lawsuits, right? Where businesses are out there trying to use litigation and their money and muscle to prohibit basically free speech, right? That's out there. So it makes it riskier for businesses to sue over negative online reviews. And Pennsylvania does, in fact, have a statute that was enhanced as recently as 2024, and to protect Pennsylvanians from speaking out online for things that are considered matters of public concern, including taxes, abortion, education, healthcare, guns, transportation. Everyday actions like posting an online review are now shielded from some potential lawsuits. I'm not saying all of them. I'm not saying that you have impunity to say whatever it is that you want to say online, but this law out there that can be used against you if you're suing somebody because of something negative that they said out there. Now, this law was passed relatively recently. It's just 2024, and here we are now in 2026. So there isn't a lot of case law. There's no case law that I'm aware of in particular on defining what a quote unquote matter of public concern is for purposes of protection. So exactly what is that? What is a matter of public concern that is protected under this statute? Is any review about a restaurant an online review? Is any review about a repair shop that doesn't do good repairs a matter of public concern? We have yet to find out exactly what that is, and the statute really doesn't define that in particular. But what this law provides for is an early dismissal mechanism. So, defendants, if you've filed a lawsuit against somebody who made a defamatory online statement against you, defendants can now file a special motion to dismiss against lawsuits that fall into this category of lawsuits that are prohibited under this statute. And there's a burden shift that happens. So once the defendant shows that whatever their online statement is fits in the statutory definition of a matter of public concern, then your business is going to have to prove that their claim has actual merit, including that it is an absolutely false statement and that you specifically have sustained damages as a result of this statement. So, it's going to put the burden on you right at the very beginning of the case to put that stuff out there. So, you can't just file a lawsuit counting on this economic warfare to get the other person to take this post down, because they can't afford to litigate, or they don't want to litigate the case. And so you're trying to browbeat them through force of will into taking these online reviews down. That that's specifically the type of activity that this statute is intended to oppose or counter, right? So if you lose, right, if a defendant files this motion to dismiss and you can't prove that your case is meritorious, you can't prove that you sustain damages, there's just this post out there that you believe is defamatory about you, and you're just concerned about the impact that it's going to have on your business, but you can't come in and tell a judge specifically that it in fact has had an impact on your business in some kind of a reasonable, believable way, your case might get dismissed. And to add insult to injury, the court mandatorily under the statute, you're probably going to have to pay the defendant's attorney's fees and legal costs as well. So you got to be really thinking twice about what you're doing if you do in fact file the lawsuit. So in summary, the takeaways from this webinar today, before I answer a couple of questions here, are number one, claim your digital presence. So take control of your digital presence so that all of the information that you can control about your business out there is true, accurate, and correct so that people can find you, right? Number two, monitor your digital presence, your online presence. Be proactive, not reactive. So be monitoring what's going on out there. Set up the Google alerts so that you know at the earliest possible time that somebody has posted something about you. And that if it's negative, you want to know all of that. A Google alert is going to tell you anytime something gets posted about you. It could be positive, but you want to know as soon as possible if something out there is negative so that you can take steps to mitigate it or counteract it or have it removed before it does more damage to your business than it needs to be able to do if it's left unnoticed. And then keep your cool, right? You got to check your emotions. Don't let them get the better of you. Use sound judgment, when thinking about how you're going to respond to whatever this negative review is. And it might just be that responding to a bad review to say, I'm sorry that we let you down or we didn't meet your expectations. We invite you to call so that we can talk to you about this and fix it. That might be enough. That might be what other online shoppers out there are looking to see that you've done. And that may be enough to take away the sting of an otherwise bad review. Don't leave it out there just hanging without any type of a positive response from you that makes you look good is better than no response at all. And then finally, one of my favorite sayings in life, this too shall pass. So don't fall into the tendency to believe that the online bad review or negative statement is going to be more impactful than it's going to be otherwise, right? It may not be any big deal. So don't get too hepped up about it, right? These things do pass after a while. If it's just one negative comment about you on Facebook, put it in perspective. How many people are going to see it? It might not be very many people are going to see it. Or if they see it out there, I mean, people have a very short attention span anymore these days. Maybe it won't get noticed, after a while, and, you don't worry too much about it. So I think it's a good expression to keep in mind. This too shall pass along the way. So let me see if there are any questions that we have.